Welcome back to another episode of the Medtech Experts. I am your trusty host, Scott Alexander, here with my esteemed colleagues, Barbara Stein, Mike Sperduti, and the questionable Skender Daerti. We are going to continue our conversation around voice of customer and the impact that it can have on companies' trajectory. So this is a series that's really about how we can give you very practical, very actionable things that can then help you to drive the business forward in a meaningful way. So last episode was about voice of customer, and today we're going to dive deeper in on that and get into a very specific piece, which is advisory boards. What are they? How do you use them? Who sits on them? What are the best practices? Things like that. So I think, Skender, you do at the Clinician Exchange, y'all are pretty active in advisory board development and management and things like that. Do you want to kick us off, and then maybe Barbara and Mike and I will chime in as we go through?
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks, Scott. As far as what is an advisory board, let's start there. In the last episode, we talked a little bit more about voice of customer, and voice of customer largely involves having an ensemble of subject matter experts provide you their opinions kind of unfettered. Oftentimes it's more in a colder, sterile environment, only from the perspective of you don't have any intimacy with them. You're asking them for purely objective answers to questions that you're asking, whether it be in a focus group, some sort of forum, a survey, etc. Well, once you gather that information, now you need to dive in a little bit deeper, even into the insights garnered from that. And the only way to do that is on a little bit more of an intimate scale. So when we talk about this transition of going from kind of a standard focus group, Q&A, survey environment to one that is now, okay, well, that's interesting. We've either validated or invalidated some of our thoughts. We've opened some new questions and thoughts. And you don't keep just going down this, hey, let's do more surveys and focus groups. At some point, you want to hone in on a few pieces. And that's where the intimacy comes in. And that's how you form an ad board. And an advisory board is usually just a group of subject matter experts and or key opinion leaders, okay, that you've formed in a more intimate type of nature, centered on specific type of requirements, okay? So whether it's a specific product that you're going to introduce, or you've identified a key challenge that came out of that voice of customer. The key thing is advisory boards are like snowflakes. No two are the same, okay? You don't have to approach it from the context of, we're going to have an advisory board for this product. Well, this product could touch 4 different modalities. Maybe you could have 4 different advisory boards, one for each modality. You don't have to have an advisory board that has 15 people. You could have one master advisory board and 3 sub-advisory boards based on specialty, all feeding each other. The idea here with this whole voice of customer series that hopefully everybody's getting is the idea, yes, you're spending a little bit more time, a little bit more effort, a little bit more resources on the front end, but by continuously asking the questions here, you're not wasting money there. And that's when the big dollars come up, right? Doesn't matter how much you spend here, 5,000, 10,000, 100,000. It's still a fractional comparison to what you would have if you didn't have these discussions in a more intimate, repetitive way than going to market, launching something, and only finding out that you have to scrap all the inventory you built up because you got to redo the product. Mm-hmm. Okay? Or your filing is wrong because you thought this was going to be the key piece that everybody was going to buy, and you went for this filing with the FDA only to find out that indication does you nothing, right? So that's what we're advocating for, is a systematic way to get insight and get intimate with those people who will ultimately be surrounding themselves with a product or service that you're going to use. And the key thing with advisory boards in some way, shape, or form is to do what we call close the circuit. So identify who are all the personas that are going to be involved in the decision-making process, right? One of the key things that we always think about, even when it comes to infection control or processing or sterility, et cetera, people forget about EVS. Well, if you build an advisory board, have an EVS member in there, right? We all think about the top line and the physicians and the nurses and the techs, but we always forget about that other person that could be in there. So the idea of an advisory board is you create a closed circuit to replicate every ounce of what you could come across in your commercialization model. And now you're talking to these people on an intimate scale. Maybe it's theoretic. You haven't launched anything yet. Maybe it's just give me some strategy for when we do launch. Okay. Maybe it's, is this the thing that we're seeing and is this appealing to you? And if it is, how do we make it more appealing? We're all competing for some level of prioritization amongst our customers. The advisory board is supposed to be able to get you from a perspective of being, you come in and introduce your product or your service and you're number 100 on the priority list. But now, because you've talked to everybody within that closed circuit dimension, hopefully you've got a value proposition that you're introducing that starts you off at number 1 or 2 on the priority list.
So Skender, one of the things you said is interesting. So the no advisory boards are the same, and then you can have multiple advisory boards within an organization. So I guess my first question is there typically a core group of advisors that every company should have just because it makes sense for you to have? Or does that weigh on the expertise within the organization? And then the follow-up to that is, there could be some confusion on what's the difference between a consultant and somebody on an advisory board?
Yeah, great question. So the first part of that, every organization in our space probably should have some sort of medical or clinical advisory board, just as kind of their overriding structure, right? These aren't necessarily the business board of advisors. They could be, they could not be, right? I mean, they could serve both hats, but essentially they're there to kind of work from the clinical outcomes and scientific proofing perspective, an overriding idea. But now when you start thinking of go-to-market dynamics, right, you might want to get more of a dispersion of thought from them besides just a focus group. Because if you have, if you're launching something into the oncology space and maybe on your medical board, you have 4 oncologists, 4 oncology nurses, that's great. But now maybe you want to get an understanding of what's happening more at the infusion spot. So you make an advisory board of 4 specialized oncology infusion nurses. Okay. You still have this medical advisory board kind of as your principal guiding driver to your product dimensions, your strategy dimensions, et cetera. But now you're just getting a dispersion from those people that are going to replicate one of your core customer demographics and really getting some of those understandings. Okay. And for an advisory board, there's no saying, this medical advisory board, they may be with you from inception to exit, but this advisory board, you could have an advisory board for 3 months. You could have an advisory board for 9 months. You could have them for 2 years, right? You can mix and match from that dynamic. All you're trying to do is get closer to the thoughts of your customer at an earlier stage where it's cheaper than getting it later. Okay. And then to ask your question about, I think you asked about consultant. Is that what I heard?
What's the difference, right? Because, wouldn't some of these things I could address with a consultant? Why would I bring in an advisor as opposed to a consultant?
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of getting into semantics there, Mike, right? Because truly some of the advisors are consultants and vice versa, depending on how you want to use them, right? It's more of just the thought process of, yes, they are advising, they're consulting. You can have them do a variety of things, but it's more of the idea of having a dispersion of thought rather than relying on an end value of one, which I can't tell you, we've all seen it. We all know it. We see it happen repeatedly, and it happens even, I did a market research project. When? I did it 4 years ago. Okay, great. Mm-hmm. That's what you're resting on. You're resting on that. Okay. So it's more of the idea of having this continuous connectivity to end users and the changing patterns, behaviors, et cetera.
So what I want to ask you, Skender, is it's all fine and well. So everybody says, oh, I'm going to put one of those together, or I have one now. What are some attributes that the medtech companies should really have to maximize the use of an advisory board? And by that, I mean, like listening skills or, acting on things and giving feedback. So from your experience, what are some of those attributes? Or now that I have an advisory board, what do I do with them? And how do I do that?
Yeah. So once again, coming back to that snowflake principle, right? It's not all advisory boards have to be this long standing 12 months we meet so often. It can sometimes just be a dynamic where you meet with them for a period of 3 days over a course of time. Okay. And basically the whole objective is to almost strip yourself naked and give yourself to these people and say, here's what we're coming with. Okay. Give it to me. What is appealing to this? What is not? So the first thing to answer your question on attributes, okay, is we're looking for people that are going to give us the answers that we don't want to hear and have the confidence and courage and creating the environment where they feel comfortable doing so. Okay. Because most people feel more comfortable if I'm paying you, right, than you telling me what I want to hear. I feel good about that interaction. Thank you. That's great. It's not what you want, right? You should be paying somebody to tell you what you don't want to hear if you're doing it in that environment. So you've got to create the environment and the construct that allows people to feel comfortable to share their completely unfettered opinions on what you're asking them. And then you need those people that can be, just by nature, courageous to tell you those things and not err on the side of, I want Barbara to like me, and I better tell her, what I like about her or what I like about that product or service. So that's kind of the first thing. The second thing is you want people to have a little bit of a broader field of vision. Okay, so it's one thing to, unless you're going to have multiple advisory boards where you have we have clients that have some for acute, for non-acute. Okay. And the patterns of behavior are staunchly different. Sometimes they have an advisory board that has both members involved in it. Okay. In one board, because they want to have the two of them, the two sides be able to talk to each other and have them kind of cross-pollinate ideas. Either which way, you have to have a situation where you're thinking about who are all the situations and scenarios and the circumstances that we may be involved in, and how do I get representation from all those personas?
Hey, Skender.
Yeah.
How do you balance like things like friends versus strangers, right? Folks that have like a lot of gray hair versus like young up and comers. Like, how do all those? I'm talking about me, Barbara. I mean, I'm the one with all the gray. But like, how do you think about that in the context of making up an advisory panel or advisory board?
Yeah, it's another thing of you want to have the demographic dispersion there and representation. So if you only have gray bearded representation on there, the error, and we see this often, right? The error of thought is I have now accumulated these people that have all these areas of expertise and all these years of experience and then therefore knowledge. And that's fantastic. But what we've seen since COVID is that side of the world is also retired at a rapid pace and is exiting at a rapid pace and is being replaced by a much younger cohort. So yes, this the gray bearded ones may be able to tell you what has happened over the last 30 years and talk about the trends of the last 5 years, but they can't tell you about the trends of the last 5 months.
So Skender, I think that's a powerful point. And I think that it's relevant no matter how old somebody is, because things are changing at an incredible rate, right? So I look at it like this, and I've seen this a lot, and we all have to be aware of this, that there are people that are living on a reputation that they earned years ago.
Yes.
It's almost like that Mike Tyson syndrome, right? Where, people think still, Mike's the guy to fight, and the guy hasn't fought for 50 years or something like that. He's still living off this badass, I'm getting in the gym with people, right? He's not that guy. And so that guy or girl that, achieved that level of expertise The question is, how effective are you today? Right now, are you relevant at this second? And I don't care if you're 35 or 75. If you can't bring it today and show examples today, you're worthless.
Yes. And that's why you have to have both of them in some representation, right?
Mm-hmm.
This person has seen more. They've been in, the gray bearded person has seen more. They've been more. They just have more collective experience and can tell you different answers from different things that they've experienced. This person may not have all the experiences to be able to give you all the insights from all the things and all the circumstances at which your product or service could be used. But you know what they can tell you is how to relate to them today, right? Because, you know, the old ways in which we could get to these people by trying to find who's on the board of directors of this society or that society, and then all I've got to do is get to that society and host some sort of speaking session. These people don't care about those speakers, right? They care about the TikTok video, right? And so that's why you got to figure out, you have to have that representation from all sides.
One of the things I think that's really critical is that for our audience is who's making up the questions and who's sort of designing what that interaction is going to look like. It was the same on the provider side. Is when we get a new product and we want to do an evaluation, the supplier always wanted us to use their evaluation form. And every time when you read it, it just pointed to, hey, it's going to be a good thing. So how important is that aspect, and how do they develop that?
Well, that's, oh man, that's Pandora's box right there. We have,
I didn't tell the audience this is going to be a 4.5 hour episode.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But go ahead, Skender.
Yeah. So again, it comes down to, you know, in the last podcast, I talked about the say versus do dynamic, right? And if everybody remembers that say versus do paradigm, it's, if I ask everybody on here, they're going to have an opinion of some sort. And then the good natured aspect of them is going to tell us all the things that they like about it. And then, yes, they will pursue more information on that. The second this podcast is over, everybody immediately goes and does their own thing again, right? We, you know, while we're recording this, we've probably all received 10 emails, 5 text messages, and a few phone calls, right? So even though you could have the best objective in the world to be like, oh, I'm absolutely moved by what Scott said, I'm going to act on it, you're not really, because you've already forgotten about it, unless it's something that's so absolutely compelling to the core, you know, that is absolutely moved a major problem, a major challenge that I'm having, and you've shown me something that's an epiphany by nature, and it's going to cause that, then I'm going to make that a priority. All those phone calls, emails, text messages be damned, right? That's that say versus do. And the only way you get to finding that out, even with an advisory board, is to make sure that you're constructing the questions and your approach to those discussions in a way that allows you to discern, will you go and fight for this with purchasing? If I was to show you all this information, will you take this piece and bring it to your next value analysis meeting? If your value analysis person tells you, yeah, guess what? We're going to kick it to the next meeting. Will you actually kick a cloud of dust and say, no, I need this pronto, or I need an exception to be able to use this now? Those are the types of questions, maybe not those in perfect order or how they're said, but those are the kind of dynamics that you want to get from the advisory board, because you want to find out when you're selling a product or a service, what is it that moves your audience, okay? And instead, too many people are sitting there being like, do you like that this pen is gray? Do you like that the pen has a cap? Tell me, how would you use a cap? And everybody's going to say all the things that they can tell you about it. But when push comes to shove, are they actually going to care about moving on a cap with a pen? And that's where, Barbara, when you asked who comes up with the questions, so often we get presented these questions that are like asking about the pen and the cap. They're not asking about the problems, and they're not asking about the way that's going to catalyze them to act on the problem. The pen is immaterial, right? It's kind of like Jordan Belfort. The only way you sell a pen is by talking to somebody that needs one.
I'll tell you right now that this whole pen thing, and for those of you who are watching it on YouTube or a visual where you could see it, it was almost like your analogy. I don't know if you saw this, again, but maybe you guys did. His pen was like cooperating and disappearing. You were almost like David Copperfield the way you did that. That should be a video clip for this thing. And yeah, I'm telling you, it was wild. And enjoyed the explanation as well.
Yeah.
So let's say that I'm running a med device company. I'm head of sales and marketing. And I think, gosh, this sounds like a good idea, but I have no idea how to start. What are the first couple of steps that I would want to take to be able to go down this path of building an advisory board?
Well, the easy thing is you
call Skender Daerti.
Skender Daerti.
1-800-Skender.
1-800-Skender. I'm available anytime you need me. Yeah. So the first thing.
One thing. Sorry to interrupt, but Barbara, you're on something. As a marketing guy, if we could get the number 1-800-Skender to be the phone number for the clinician exchange, I think that's gold. So
just remember, S falls in the RS, RST dial, so it could mean something totally different. Okay.
Obviously, you've thought about this a lot, Skender.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, the first thing that you've got to do, obviously, before you even engage anybody, is just you have to be honest with yourself, and that's usually the first challenge that we have. Is people not being honest with themselves. Do you really want to hear things that are cold and hard, or do you want to hear things that make you feel warm and fuzzy? Until you can come to that realization of, I want to hear it how it is. That's the first step, is can you be objectively okay with hearing things that you may not like? Okay. Then the second thing is, what is our objective in this? Are we looking, and you got to look at it from every standpoint. What is the objective of launching this product or service? What is the objective of why we're looking to do this? We have companies that come to us for an advisory board for products that are 3 years out and are totally stalemated, right? They're having total stagnation. They can't get any uptake. Well, what's going on there? Are we willing to move based on this? We just had a situation where we were working with the product managers, and then the VP of marketing came into a call and said, we already did this market research. The customer likes it. They want it. Our market research showed that the customer did like it. What we told them is that the pain wasn't high enough, and that people will tell you it's a good product, but they're not going to convert to it because the pain is not high enough. And in this world of ever competing priorities, you're not going to get uptake. You've got a good product. People like it. That's the say dynamic. The do dynamic is, it's not solving a problem that I find unsurmountable. So from that perspective, you have to be able to come in, A, be able to be honest with yourself, and B, set out the objectives that you're really trying to achieve, knowing that one of those objectives could be a kill. Might have to kill this project, might have to kill this product, might have to kill some of those things. But if you don't come there with open objectivity, then it doesn't matter what the other steps are, Scott, in your equation here. All of them are moot. If we are able to show you that the outcome is great product, just don't know if the market's right for it, and you're still going to sit there because you're a VP of marketing and be like, I have to do it, then why'd you even spend the money to do it?
It's funny. When I was running innovation back at Covidien Medtronic, we had this concept of death threat driven design, and because I was running, it's innovation. So like we're coming up with new projects and what can we do? And the whole thing was you're trying to kill your project.
Yes.
And so at the end of the day, you're trying to figure out what are all the reasons that could cause this thing to fail. And if you try to kill it for long enough and you're unable to, it's a good idea. But if you're petting it and stroking it and feeding it, wet dog food, all the time, like as opposed to the dry stuff, which my dogs get. But if that's what you're doing, it's gonna look good until the cold reality of the world hits it, and then you realize, oh, I really screwed the pooch on this one. So
yeah, I think what's important. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, good.
I think what's really important, and it's going to be brought up way early when we started the podcast, but it's not just when things are going well or going bad. You really need to touch base with the different personas at regular intervals, because what might be going well here may not be going well there. And I remember fondly that when I first retired from active hospital work, my first consulting gig was to ask me to be on an advisory board because they wanted the secret sauce. How do I get in and all those sorts of things about how do I get products in and that sort of thing. But it's checking in with certain advisors, whoever they are, the first day of launch or when the sales team has been out for 3 months and stuff, and what are they running into and things. Don't try to handle it all internally because you get very myopic. I'm sure everyone on this call has seen or heard that. And there are companies that have been in business for 20 years, 50 years, and they're going to a different model of like thought partners and things. And that's what I'm seeing and experiencing out there as well.
I know we're getting close to time. I think we've got about 5 minutes left or so. Do we want to maybe think about some of the final steps that somebody could take? And again, how to make this actionable coming out of the conversation? I guess, Barbara, do you want to maybe?
I can continue to talk. Sure. Yeah. I think picking up on where I just left off, I think you have to think internally. When was the last time we shuffled the deck on an advisory board? Have we put in an advisory board? Did we call it something else? Did we have one clinical advisor? Or do you also now need a production advisor or a quality control advisor or a risk assessment advisor, whatever it is, so that you're attacking different parts of your business? And I think you said it well, Skender, it's not necessarily one product. That's a totally different conversation than what's really happening in our company, because everybody gets different headwinds. And so, we've just been, knocked down by this headwind about, trying to get raw materials and what do we really do? So there's just different compartmentalized things about all these different types of advisors. So I've been telling people this now for the last 2 years. Think internally within your own operations, no matter what they are, what world they're in, and think about what's going well and what's not, and who might we need to bring in for some thought partners or advisors or things like that.
Yeah.
Mike, what kind of thoughts do you have?
I think I'm actually in the process of building an advisory board for one of my companies right now. And we actually were able and happy enough we got 2 people on board already. We have 5 positions that we're looking to fill. And the interesting part about going through the process that I'm going through now is, Skender, to your point, is, really scoping what they're going to be responsible for advising on, what the specific deliverables are, how I'm going to hold them accountable to what it is that they're going to do for us. And then, in the core ones that I'm doing right now, we're providing equity into the company for those high level advisory positions because they're giving us, and, I need information in markets and in countries that I've never done business in. And so am I just going to pick that stuff out of the air, or am I going to get a hot? No, I want somebody who is currently climbing Mount Everest, who survives every time he goes up there, and he's going to take me there, right? So I always want somebody who is demonstrating that they have done the exact thing that I want to do, or that area that I want to focus in on, and is doing it today. And that would be my takeaway: is just make sure they're current.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'll share some thoughts, and then Skender, maybe as the resident expert, maybe you can kind of give some your final thoughts. But I think ultimately in business, it's about identifying how do you create an unfair advantage, right? Whether it's you have a better product or service than your competitors, you better understand the marketplace, you got some leg up on other people who are trying to solve the same problem that you're trying to solve. And to me, things like advisory panels, broadly, voice of customer, like hearing from the marketplace what's going on, is a very, very inexpensive way to create an unfair advantage. because if we think about most of our interactions with customers or prospects, the vast majority of them are in the context of sales. How do I get you to buy something? How do I get you to continue buying something? Right? How do I, you bought something, you weren't happy. How do I fix it? So there's all this stuff around how do I get you to buy stuff? And there's a natural defensiveness in people when we're talking about sales, right? Or like some sort of a commercial transaction. I think things like advisory panels are one of the few situations where you can talk to people who very well could be your customers, either today or in the future, and you can have a relaxed conversation in a way that allows you to understand where they're coming from so you can better serve them. If you can better serve your prospects than your competitors can, you're going to win. And that's just the physics of what business is. And so I look at this and I think, and there's a reason why we pick these topics as things that we need to hone in on, is this is low-hanging fruit. We're not talking about $1 million investment to get your first advisory board going, right? And yet the outcomes of that, like the ROI on your investment, are sky high. So to me, that's one of the big things, is like it creates an unfair advantage. And then just to echo what you said, Mike, the other thing is you have to hold people accountable to, maybe Skender, you said it, but the idea of like, we need to be able to set these things out. This is not just like, come hang out with me for the day. This is, let me be really focused and purposeful on why I have you here, whether you're a clinician, you're a supply chain person, you name it. Like, what am I trying to get out of it? And they're doing work, they're consulting for you. Like you're looking for specific things for them. So I think those two things, number one, do it to create an unfair advantage. And number two, be structured and focused around how you do it, really set an organization up for success as it relates to understanding the marketplace. But Skender, you're the resident expert. Final thoughts.
Yeah, great insight. The final thought I just want to leave everybody with that I think gets overlooked is the idea of closing that circuit. And I referenced it before, but the best boards that we have, if they're going to create one advisory board theoretically for a product launch, are representation from all the end users, okay, in some way, shape, or form. And then they're thinking about, this product has some sort of digital component to it. We should have a member of IT on there. We should have a chief quality officer involved. Maybe somebody at the CNO or CMO level outside of just the end user. Maybe there has to be a biomedical technician included into this too, because that's the first entry of a product into a hospital. That idea of closing that circuit is why you're doing an advisory board in the first place. It's not easy to recruit these people. Like finding a chief quality officer. I mean, fortunately, that's what our organization does, is we have 20,000 of these people. Unfortunately, we spent a lot of years, time, and effort combing the world to get what we think are the most preeminent ones out there. But it's not easy. But you've got to think about those things and thinking about the fact that IT right now, and I think, Scott, you've said it on previous podcasts, they're the great deal killer that nobody sees coming, right? Nobody sees them coming. And as soon as you talk about putting something on a network, you have scared the bejesus out of most IT people, okay? And if they don't know anything, they're killing the deal because you're not touching their network. So if you're thinking about an ad board, think about, how do I close the circuit? Who did I think of? Who did I not think of? Biomedical technicians are always left off, but it's the first entry point in the hospital. You don't get that sticker, it's not going anywhere upstairs, right? So these are the things that we just really like to make sure that people do understand, is the fact that an advisory board, whether you do it as one big one and a few small ones, either which way, just think of it as being all-encompassing to your strategy, and it's more about the end user and what their needs are. When you're doing an advisory board, I like to talk about the principle of smartphones. And there's a lot of people that have their phone always showing themselves, and they're dominated by selfies. And then there's other people that take that smartphone and are taking a look at the environment around them and taking pictures, right? In an ad board, that phone has to be facing out, not in. And that's my last piece. So appreciate everybody joining today. Thank you so much. Scott, you want to take it away and close it?
Sure. You're just used to closing. Thanks for letting me sub in to be you. So thanks everybody for listening. Just a couple things. Number one, if you like we wanted to get very specific on what you can do, very actionable in this series. If you like it and you have other topics you want us to dive deeper in on, just comment. What would you like to see? And we'll see if we can work that into a future show. Otherwise, be sure to like, share, subscribe to what we're doing. And thank you again for listening. Hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank
you, everybody.